What if I told you that real-life superpowers, things to give you a profound advantage versus your peers and competitors, were available to you today? Superpowers that will improve your communication, helping you understand yourself and others better, leading to improved relationships and the results you want more often. They are the understanding of personality profiling insights and emotional intelligence, two tools accessible to all, which when mastered truly are a superpower. We will cover emotional intelligence in future videos. Today, we give an overview of personality profiling. For a comprehensive process of sustainable and prolonged self-improvement, personality profiling, when properly understood and utilized, is a foundational bedrock for all other personal progress. The deep understanding of self, others, and how to communicate more effectively leads to improved relationships and the results you want more often. The personality profiling models we use come from the DISC model developed by William Moulton Marston, and once the basic principles are understood, we will simplify these into 4 colours: red, yellow, green and blue. But first, some history. Whilst contemporary interpretations such as DISC have been around for about a century, we can go back to Hippocrates, he of the Hippocratic Oath in medicine, and ancient Greece for the first recording of the thinking. Hippocrates recognised 4 humours: choleric, red, sanguine, yellow, phlegmatic, green, and melancholic, blue. Then, some 1700 to 1900 years later, the Aztecs of Central America used something very familiar to categorise different people: earth, air, fire and water. Fire, red, air, yellow, earth, green, and water, blue. Long before the advent of modern psychology, independent of each other, civilizations found themselves recognizing similar characteristics that define the personalities of all of us, human beings. In 1928, William Moulton Marston, inventor of the lie detector test still in use today, developed previous works of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung to conceive the DISC model of personality categorization. Just like the Greeks and Aztecs before him, Marston's model had 4 components which align with the same colours. D stands for dominance, the red category. I for inspiration, the yellow category. S for submission, the green category. And C for compliance, the blue category. So we understand the history, but what do these categories mean in practical terms? It was Walter Clark who adapted Marston's work in the 1950s to enable self-assessment for the first time, and then was revolutionized by Bill Bonstetter in the 1980s with the application of computer science to improve the acquisition and analysis of the data, which has continued to evolve until today. Whilst knowing the origins is important, a common issue with personality profiling is that it is seldom explained in a way that can be practically applied for use in real life. When understood and applied, this profiling can upgrade perception of self and others, enhance communication, and improve results. But to get there, we need to transpose the psychological science into everyday, understandable language that will help you recognize traits in yourself and others. Whenever introducing these reports to people, I'm always keen to explain the following up front. These reports score any individual between 0 and 100 in the 4 different personality categories. This makes 94,109,400 possible combinations, with everyone having at least some of all 4 categories. The point here is that whilst we speak in terms of the 4 categories with so many possible combinations, the reports really do reflect the vast diversity of humanity. What we are talking about here are dominant characteristics. 80% of people will have a primary and then a secondary dominant characteristic. 5% of people will have just one. Most of the rest will have a primary, secondary and tertiary dominance, with the rarest of all, with the smallest percentage of profiles ever created, having a plateau of all 4 categories. So now we will look at what these 4 categories actually mean in the real world by separating them into these quadrants: red, dominance; yellow, inspiration, green, submission, and blue, compliance. With these names, the categories still feel very psychology, so what characteristics could we identify in ourselves or others in each of them? Reds are defined by their intensity, competitiveness, and results focus. They can be perceived as dominant, pushy, and hard, strong-willed, and independent. Think Donald Trump. Yellows are charismatic and inspiring, very talkative, with their head in the clouds, but at their worst, manipulative, undisciplined, and egotistical. Think Boris Johnson. Greens are grounded, stable, and supportive. Reliable and respectful, they can seem uncertain and dependent. Often greens will be the most resistant to change. Pleasant in their demeanour, greens are naturally excellent listeners. Nelson Mandela is a good example of a dominant green. Finally, blues are analytical. They will often seem serious and thoughtful, with a tendency to be obsessed with detail. Tasks tend to be approached in a methodical manner, using proven methods with improvements only added to what already works well. Bill Gates is a famous blue. To help associate the colours with their tendencies, we will refer to them as fire red, the most combustible of the colours, sunshine yellow, for those eternal optimists, maybe with their heads above the clouds, let alone in them, earth green, the most grounded individuals, stable and calm, and cool blue, the icy cold analysts, considered, diligent, and critical. So to recap, fire reds are intense, competitive, and driven, fiercely results-focused. Fire reds like to win, potentially, whatever the cost. Donald Trump is a good example. Sunshine yellows are optimistic, open, inspiring, and sociable, potentially more likely to enjoy the after-work drink than the work itself. Boris Johnson is a very sunshine yellow individual. Earth greens are the most grounded, stable, and steady. Typified by being excellent listeners, earth greens can be supportive, reliable, and prudent. Nelson Mandela is one of the most famous ever earth greens. Cool blues are analytical, often deeply so. These are the people at work or at home who have, what appears to the rest of us, an unhealthy fondness for spreadsheets. Bill Gates is an excellent example of a cool blue. We know all the colours a little better now, so which is the best? Of course, none of them are better or worse than another, and we all have a combination of all of them within us. An individual's dominant personality type is in no way a guide to whether they are a good or bad person. Any colour can be good or bad, to any degree. Nor is a personality profile an indication of intelligence. They highlight attitude, not aptitude. So, any colour profile can be good or bad, smart or not to any degree, and these factors, along with lived experience, will obviously further impact the behaviours and tendencies of any individual. Each of these famous faces are very good examples of each of the dominant personality categories, all very successful in their own ways, and each would score differently on an IQ test. The point of understanding the dominant personality traits of ourselves and others is in how we adapt both our own communication and respond to communication from others in order to be more effective more often. This is true of all relationships, be them professional or personal. We will go into more detail on how to approach this adaptation to others in a future video, but hopefully this gives you a sound foundational understanding of the history and contemporary relevance of personality profiling. I truly believe that if we were all to have our own personality report and understand those of others, the world would be a more harmonious place. Much personal conflict comes from the failure to understand why someone does things the way they do and why it seems to be at odds with how we would approach the same thing. If you've made it to the end of this video, I will assume you have an interest in this subject, and if you do not yet have your own personality profile, I recommend you get one, either personally or by encouraging your employer to run them for your company. The key in sourcing this is working with a provider who can help you understand the profile to enable you to use it in your life and work to improve. Subscribe to our channel and you'll be the first to know when we've launched new content further explaining this and other development and improvement topics. Do leave any comments and questions and we'll endeavour to respond. Thank you for watching today.